Hello, we are Jack Hardin, Sterling Smith, and Bryant Swann, and this is our presentation on the Textbook Brokers video project. Textbook Brokers, just a little bit about the company. It was first opened in 2005, and there are currently 2 locations in Murfreesboro, one on Greenland and one on Rutherford. Just recently, they created their own scholarship for the MTSU Jones College of Business, and it's kind of centered around entrepreneurship and is awarded annually to students in the College of Business. And the idea behind this was to kind of support those students trying to create their own ideas and go forward in entrepreneurship, which is similar to how Textbook Brokers got its start. So that's a cool little tidbit about how they're helping out in the MTSU community. And at MTSU Textbook Brokers, they do around 25,000 to 30,000 rentals per semester, which is just an extraordinary number and really shows you how much influence they have here at MTSU and how popular they are with the students here. There are a few common misconceptions about Textbook Brokers. The first being that one of their main challenges is facing companies like Amazon and Chegg and Follett and Barnes & Nobles and similar companies like that. And that's a misconception because they're actually sellers on Amazon. They have a great relationship with Amazon. They supply inventory to Chegg customers since just after the company's founding, so they have a long relationship there. And then Textbook Brokers is both customer and competitor with Barnes & Noble and Follett. So they're not as much competitors as you might think, rather than just, I guess you might say partners, or there is a certain sort of business relationship there. Now we'll kind of focus on the biggest challenges Textbook Broker faces, and main one that we kind of decided was making that transition from off-campus provider to an on-campus curator of both content and apparel. So they're, instead of just doing textbooks, they're wanting to get into apparel and other merchandise as well. And one thing we noticed was that more than 80% of Textbook Broker sales are actually textbook rentals. So they're not doing as much in merchandise as they might like. And an interesting statistic is that a $30 rental today was worth over $100 5 years ago, meaning that while they're doing 80% of their sales in textbooks, the value of those textbooks and the return they're getting on those is going down. So another point to make is that the MTSU bookstore is not owned by Textbook Brokers. It is instead contracted out to the company, and MTSU gets a certain percentage of their profit. And this model is unsustainable as their profit from each textbook keeps going down and down and down, while that cut from MTSU is going to remain the same. It's going to be really difficult to stay profitable over the long run. And then finally, Textbook Brokers sponsors MTSU athletics and always has stands at football, basketball games. And while they have an active presence on campus, they don't actually have a location on campus. Instead, they have the 2 locations near campus. How can they do this? How can they beat these challenges? Well, one possible way to overcome this challenge is to prove that their way of selling the textbooks is just more efficient than the current providers for the school, so that MTSU wants to kind of make them their main provider. And if the school begins to lose money due to Textbook Brokers gaining a large portion of the market, then we might see a case where MTSU would want to merge with Textbook Brokers, which would get them their kind of location on campus and would let them earn enough profit to be sustainable. Or MTSU would be forced to stop selling books on campus because they're not making a profit. Thus, MTSU would have a loss, and Textbook Brokers' main competition would be eliminated. So the idea we're kind of going with here is that if Textbook Brokers can keep increasing sales and gain such a large portion of the market, that MTSU no longer is inclined to sell textbooks because they're not making a profit, then you might get a situation where either they merge with Textbook Brokers and allow them to become the on-campus provider, or MTSU would just stop selling textbooks, and Textbook Brokers would be the only, I guess, market provider here in Murfreesboro. The first strategy we kind of decided would be the best to achieve this goal is a differentiation strategy. One thing we thought they could do is offer products and services that MTSU can't offer. This will cause people who want these products or services to have to go to textbook brokers, which would then give them a rather large market advantage. Another strategy could be cost leadership, and by offering the lowest possible prices for their products, they would gain a large market share, and then they would just pay the least amount for textbooks and apparel. So this would be an effective strategy, as these items are typically expensive for college students with little money. So our two strategies here is one, just to differentiate yourself somehow. Start offering products that MTSU can't offer. And then also, let's just have better cost, and that might lead to better profit down the road. Some alternatives. Can textbook costs be added to student tuition? And this is a question that comes up quite often. And the truth is that this alternative won't work due to the already high cost of tuition. So just adding on these textbooks onto the cost of tuition is not going to work because tuition is so high already. Which means that textbook brokers is always going to have that, market, because students are always going to be needing to buy textbooks, and they're always going to be looking for them at the lowest cost. So the lower you can get your cost, the better. And the idea behind this adding on tuition was actually rolled out by MTSU, but was unsuccessful, and textbook brokers was against this from the beginning. In order to analyze the external environment for textbook brokers, you kind of have to look at how, even if they ran their business perfectly, there's still going to be factors outside of their control that will affect their profitability. One of these is that publishers are eventually going to stop selling general textbooks that get rented out semester after semester, because they just don't, times are changing and technology is more advanced, and the general just loose leaf textbook is kind of going out of style. And because of this, there's no trade-in value for items like that. So, whereas now students can trade back in their old textbooks, they can rent them, such like that, current textbook providers are kind of going to a digital school textbook idea. And there's no trade-in items for digital books or access codes because they can only be used once. So it's kind of a student-by-student basis where students don't get any value for using the general textbooks because they can't trade them in, they can't rent them at a lower cost. And so that might really hurt textbook brokers in the future, and it's just not really in their control as it's part of their external environment. Furthermore, it is believed that the transition to instructor customized learning tools will become widely used, meaning that instructors are only going to use the materials they see needed for their class, and these large textbooks where they only might use a couple of chapters of each book are not going to be as prevalent in the future, which is just going to further eliminate the resale market for textbooks. When looking at their internal environment, we noticed a couple of things. First and foremost, a knowledgeable staff, most of which are MTSU students themselves, so they definitely know about the books, the classes, what a student might need to be successful in school, which is a huge advantage. Second is their clean and friendly atmosphere. Each time you go in there, it's clean, it's very organized, you can get in and out quickly, you don't have to stand in line for hours to get a textbook. It's really a well-run operation. Third is their promotions, giveaways, etc. That sort of thing to kind of incentivize students to come around, join the customer base, really just putting themselves out there and generating that buzz around the company. And then finally, students are always focused on getting textbooks that are easy and cheap. And that's really where Textbook Brokers has made their name. We're all students here at MTSU. We all use Textbook Brokers, and that's the real reason why, is just because of how cheap and accessible the company is. And we think all of these are huge advantages within their internal environment. And if they can really just keep strengthening these advantages and pushing forward with them, hopefully they'll be able to sustain through that any changes within their external environment. We also looked at the financial analysis part for the company, and while Textbook Brokers is not directly affiliated with MTSU, it really has become a successful business in Murfreesboro because of MTSU and the student population here, and they've opened 2 locations around MTSU, both of which have been successful. And another important note is that they're not just located in Murfreesboro, they have locations across all of Tennessee, and they provide textbooks for people in cities and universities all across the United States. And then finally, since the opening of their Greenland location, they have moved into a large building, and they now sell not only textbooks but all types of apparel and accessories, which has really increased their market reach, and I think would be the long-term goal of the company, is to add in that merchandise and other items besides just textbooks, as it's really a good revenue generating business, as well as the profit on each of these items is typically higher than that on a textbook. So we were really excited by the addition of that and think that'll be a huge advantage going forward. A few concerns about their strategies. Current textbook providers are willing to pay schools really large commissions, and we just don't feel this is efficient. And it's definitely not fair to the students, because when you pay these commissions, you're having to increase prices. Otherwise, textbook brokers just wouldn't be able to stay in business. So large commissions that might increase in the future are really going to be a drawback for the company, as they'll have to increase prices. They also include large signing bonuses. And then finally, schools are not very adaptable in matters like this. So Textbook Brokers has always been, and it needs to be in the future, ready to adapt to new challenges as they arise, so that they can kind of stay ahead of the traditional bookstores on campus. Finally, our recommendations for this is that they might be able to convince schools to let them set up a booth on campus, or perhaps a small location, to compete with the current on-campus provider. And then once they're there, they can show that they're better than the current providers, and that they're willing to offer better prices. And if they, provide the same commission as other sellers, well, if they have more sales, then their MTSU is going to make more money, and Textbook Brokers would also make more money because of the increase in traffic to their company. So we think that even if that current provider pays more in commissions per sale, a smaller commission with Textbook Brokers would be beneficial to MTSU, because the increase in the amount of sales is just going to increase their total commission. So we really think competing with those on-campus stores, that Textbook Brokers can sell them and outcompete them. Another option is to continue what they're doing now and just keep selling on Amazon, on eBay, on Facebook, and just really push their online sales and advertising, and maybe not focus as much on getting onto campuses, as far as just being that off-campus cheaper retailer, and then really starting to increase their internet presence and their internet sales. And then finally, we think they should definitely start preparing for the inevitability of textbooks to go more digital in the future. They should definitely begin looking at digital book rental programs, and maybe trying to be the first to get onto that, and then building relationships with companies to offer specialized books once the market does move that direction. So the sooner they can get ahead of the curve and become more advanced in the online version of textbooks, then maybe they can become known as the go-to company for those e-textbooks. So we think all in all that would be their best way to move going forward, and we really appreciate the company. So thank you.